from Rico and Perlo's House of Exotic Jaime's Picks Frolic. Sponsored by Jaime's Body Lube. Jaime's Body Lube, it's the best. There, I said it. I've never felt this way before. Try our new pistachio flavor of the month. I'm going to be looking at the Detroit Red Wings plants. It's going to be, to tell you the honest truth. I am a huge of Stevie Y. It's one of my favorite people in the land. He was up my wall. One of them was Stevie Y, and the other one was Jonathan Toews. I love both of them dearly as players, but it's got to the point where, as a general manager, I don't know. I'm gonna go over the roster, what they may do, the position they're in, and I'm gonna give him a little bit of flack on something that has been going on with this rebuild. There really has been out of his control, I guess you would say. And we're going to look at some of the things that they may do in the future. One thing is kind of like what they have to do or what they should do. This is a big thing when you're talking about rebuilds, especially when you see like the Montreal Canadiens doing what they're doing in such a short term, picking up like just players like Suzuki, and drafting players like Slavkovsky, Caulfield, and you look at Detroit, who probably has been rebuilding longer than them, and you're going, yeah, okay. We're going to look at the roster. We're going to look at some things that they may or may not do, and project basically what this is looking for Detroit in the summer and in the future. Last year, just before I move on, I picked Detroit. I had Detroit to make the playoffs pre-season. Didn't get it, but I made it back with Ottawa to make the playoffs after the Olympic break. Also, I had Toronto to miss the playoffs before the season started for big money. It's one of my biggest bets. That and Vancouver to miss the playoffs. Vancouver to miss the playoffs last year was minus 135. I put a ton on that. And I also was pretty huge on Toronto. The reason why I liked Detroit last year wasn't really roster construction, because I'm not really a huge fan of the roster construction. It was more about energy. I think McClellan is an excellent coach. I hear a lot of people in Detroit calling for his head now because of this, because of that. And fans tend to do that because it's way easier to hope that it's the coach that's the problem than admit that it's the team that's the problem. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is that fans generally get emotionally connected to their players and they don't want to say what needs to be said. And the other thing is just easier, because if the team is a problem, you're screwed, right? If the coach is a problem, it's an easy fix, like you're seeing in Edmonton. But all right, let's look at the Detroit Red Wings and what I think they should do, what I think likely will happen, and the reasons why for both. Okay. Show. So you got, and if you want to comment in the comment section, we'll talk afterwards like you all. Thanks everybody for coming in and listening, by the way. Awesome to have you. Where are we here? Right. Detroit. All right, we're just going to go down the depth chart. I will be looking at some of the analytics for these players as we go along here. Probably look them after. Yeah, look. Well, yeah, I'll look at it as I go. Okay. Right now, as it stands, you have Emmett Finney on the left side. He's center left wing. From from scouts I've heard, they've almost to a man said he is more than likely going to be a winger than he is a center in the NHL. He does play LW. He got 30 points in 82 games for a 20-year-old. That is actually really good. He was up and down all year. Like sometimes he was feeling it. Sometimes he was struggling. Had a tough time maintaining for a long term on the top line against top comp. And that is to be expected for a young player. But overall, I think he did fairly well. And he could improve quite a bit. And I think this is going to be a theme that we're really going to have no choice but to look at when it comes to the Detroit Red Wings. As we go along here, I'm going to check. I'll bring up Finney on my cards here, and I'll show you. Hopefully, sure. Okay. I'm at Finney. See, okay, 20-year-old, third. They have him listed as his time on ice as a third liner, and that makes sense because he did play on the fourth line quite a bit. He played on the top line. Not bad. Even strike defense for a 20-year-old, very serviceable at 43%. And play driving 37%. You can expect that to go up as the kid gets older. He's just finding his way here in the NHL. The concern I have here with him is the goals and assists and finishing numbers here at 20% and 30%. And this is something that we're going to notice with the young players of Detroit all the way through here. Their drafted players are very much so defense more players, 3-zone defensive players with not the highest skill level in the world. He did put up 30 points though, so he managed to be able to find a way. And I feel like a lot of the players in Detroit are kind of those complementary offensive players that do that find a way. And for a team that has been drafting as high as they have, but for that, you would think that would be not the case, that there would be more skill available to them here. But it's possible that because I mean, when he was in junior and he scored a lot, he did pretty well in the AHL. It's possible that he was just struggling with the pace of the NHL game, and you'll see these numbers go up. In fact, I think it's pretty likely that that's the case. But here we are. We have Emmett Finney on your top LW going into next season. That is not ideal for a team that I think a lot of people will agree are really getting tired of missing the playoffs. Just put it bluntly like that. It's been 9 or 10 years now. This quote rebuild has been going on, and the team has not really it's been slight impressed. Let's put it that way. Percentage on this year for a guy who's normally like borderline elite shutdown center. He was pressing a lot this year. Raymond as well. In fact, you can say that for just about everybody except for a couple of guys we're going to talk about. But Raymond is still good all around. You don't need to say much about that. They drafted Raymond in a good spot, and he has been everything that you want from a player like that. Now, before I go on and we talk about draft picks here, one thing I will say, and I was going to say that I will play devil's advocate for Stevie Y. The Detroit Red Wings have had horrible lottery luck. Absolutely horrible. They haven't won any lottery, I think, since they started this quote rebuild. They've dropped down almost every single time, down to fourth, down to sixth, out of the top three consistently all the time. That being said, they did make some really bad decisions, like Zadina over Hughes or Rossi for that matter. I didn't know what the heck they were doing there. And I would have loved to have heard what was going on, because I remember when they were looking at Hughes, who is from the Michigan area, I believe. They actually called his agent and said they're not going to be on him for whatever reason. I have no idea. And they went with this Zadina kid who did put up some good numbers in international hockey. He did do that, but there was always talk about not like attitude as much as, from what I understand, this kid put way too much pressure on himself and he beat himself up a lot. There was talk that he kind of had a very negative mental way of living. And I guess Detroit must have thought that they could reverse that or help him with that, but it never happened. And it just ended up being a terrible pick. So that one really hurt. I mean, if you had Quinn Hughes on this roster, it's going to change quite a bit, everything here. I will look at DeBrincat, because to tell you the honest truth, the reason why I'm looking at DeBrincat is I know last year he really bought into McClellan's system. And he put up the best defensive numbers of his career. And like by a long shot, I mean, it's not even close. So I'm going to see if that continued, because honestly, before the video, I didn't take a look at that. Well, at least I hope I am. What's going on here? Oh, that's why. Yeah. Alex DeBrincat. Yeah, no, he did. And he went back up again. And he's been, really buying into McClellan's game system, which is great. That's good that a guy has been bought in. There's no problems with DeBrincat. He's an elite second liner, above average first liner. Of course, we know about his shot, and he can score from anywhere. He's got a great shot. He's underrated playmaker too, just an offensive beast that really has bought into what McClellan is selling there. I mean, when McClellan was a coach in Edmonton and in LA, and I know Edmonton for sure because I lived in Edmonton when he was there, and he really did a good job with a really crappy team while he was there. That's why I'm a pretty big fan of his. I'm a really big fan of his. So while I'm doing this, I'm trying to look at everything as I'm doing it. But DeBrincat bought in, and so you got like a really good top three players there. Alex DeBrincat, of course, they picked up in a nice move from Ottawa, also from the area, I believe, where he always wanted to play for Detroit. Got a sweet deal on that. I will say Patrick Kane might be here on this right side, but I'm hearing rumblings where that might not be the case too. It almost sounds like Kane might want to. Is kind of took his time. Like this is enough time for him. He's getting older, and I think it's possible he could be looking to go somewhere for one more cup, which would kind of suck for Detroit. I mean, he's still a great offensive player. He can't do much defensively anymore. He doesn't have the legs for it anymore. But, I mean, he still would be a top 6 player on this team, and losing him leaves you with Mason Appleton. That's not what you want. It's going to be looking at the free agent market on the road, and we're going to look at that here this summer, and we're going to look at that as we, after this. Andrew Kopp, good defensive guy, top 3, but he's not a second line center, and that's one of the biggest issues they've had for quite some time. But that was supposed to be filled by Marco Kasper last year. And again, to show my point about what I was saying about their prospects, I'll show you Kasper here, like prospects and young players that they've been drafting. Now, this is another one where they ended up, I think they ended up picking Kasper something like 10th or 11th, where they didn't really lose the lottery. They just started getting better and weren't as bad as they were before. But really, it is kind of a good, it's kind of a good pickup for them, considering the draft that they were on. It's not bad. Yeah, he had a downturn this year. This was a sophomore year, so that quite often is the case, sophomore slump as they call it. But again, I'm going to look at like he drives offense. The offensive data here is not necessarily about his offensive skills. It's more of his ability to get the puck going the other way, create offensive zone possession, and all of those sort of things like that. Very strong defensively for a player that plays against medium competition for the most part. He's very strong defensively, and this is going to be a theme with their young players. But look at his finishing and goals. Not horrible, could improve. He might be okay. But you look at a lot of young players that are like top 10 picks and stuff that are playing on a team. Usually it's these numbers that are not very good and these numbers that are very good, that are finishing, goals, assists, their skill level. Look at his skill. His assists are at 18%. That being said, I will say, if you look here, this is the finishing, like his ability to finish line had dropped considerably. So this could be a lot to do with confidence as well. I still got a lot of hope for this player, and I'm pretty sure that they do too. And I think one of the biggest reasons why they missed the playoffs last year was Marco Kasper either lost confidence or whatever it was that he did. Whatever it was that was the problem. People also, the year before, when he put up more points, nobody knew who Marco Kasper was. In your sophomore year, people know who you are a lot more. They tried putting him down in the lineup to kind of hide him and play against lower competition, and he was still having problems producing offense. He just struggled pretty much all year, and it was kind of sad to see. And I think, like I said, if he has a good year, I think they are probably in a better spot. They possibly make the playoffs. You don't want to put that kind of pressure on the kid, but it really, before the year started, their not expectations, but I'm pretty sure they had him higher than what he produced as an offensive player. So yeah, it didn't go well for him. JT Compher, there's talk about him moving on, and for good reason, especially after last year. This is another player who is usually above average defensively, at least. And last year, he absolutely cratered. And when he's not playing well, 3-zone defensive hockey, there's not much going on with this game. So at $5 million a year, I still think there's teams out there that can say, hey, you know what? We can probably get him back to where he was before. It's only 1 year, kind of a drop off. The question is, what are you going to get? How are you going to change that? What are you going to do to replace him is what I'm trying to say. Michael Brandeskog Nygaard, They right now, as it stands, they have him on the right wing. They brought him up last year for a while. I like him. Again, though, and I don't have the analytics for this, is a defensive player with not much offensive upside. Another prospect, same type of prospect. Like when these guys build into their bodies and they become what they can become, you could have a really good shutdown team possibly. But offensively, it's just not there. And I think it seems with this kind of a theme, they've just put value on it. They put value on that and tried to they're told their development team to help these guys become better offensive players. And we'll see if it works out for them. But 44 points in 60 games in the AHL is not bad for a 20-year-old. There's still a lot of upside for Nygaard. Not sure if he's ready for full-time duty next year, but I think Detroit, at the very least, is going to add one player to this offense, hopefully. Carter Mazer, 16 points in 16 games. I think he was injured quite a bit last year. He's 24 years old. Interesting prospect, but he's not blow your mind offensive player either. Again, they're all kind of the same way. Michael Rasmussen has never developed the way they wanted to, and then Dominic Shine is a filler player. So I'm pretty sure most of the Kane could come back. That puts Shine back in the minors. What other free agents did they have? I want to take a look at that. Oh, Van Riemsdyk won't be back. I've already heard that. I've already heard that from several sources, and David Perron probably won't be back either. So they're looking to add. There's no doubt about that. I would be very surprised if they don't look that way. Now, okay, we'll take a look at the defense. And I talked about how, and Stevie Yzerman's getting a lot of flack in Detroit, and you could say deservedly so. Simon Edvinsson, he's just great. He's a great defenseman that still has a lot of offensive upside. There's nothing wrong with that. This combination, Moritz Seider, as far as I'm concerned, should have been up for the Norris this year and possibly won it. His defensive ability is absolutely unreal. Plays against elite top competition. And he did that learning from Ben Sherrod. Sherrod must be a great coach because he's not a great player. But apparently when Hughes was coming available and they were having discussions with him, Simon Edvinsson had to be part of the deal. And apparently that would have been okay. Edvinsson plus first round pick, stuff like that would have been great pickup for Vancouver. He would have been part of the deal. I think Stevie Y kind of dodged a bullet here. Quinn Hughes didn't give them the feeling that they wanted for long term, and I don't doubt that. Now, I know legally speaking, you can't put anything on paper and like that. But you're talking to people, you can figure it out what somebody wants to do and what they don't want to do. And I think Quinn Hughes looked at that Minnesota roster and felt a little better at that. Not to mention he's from the Detroit area. I'm sure he would have liked to go there, and somewhere down the road, maybe he still is able to. But without knowledge, like solid knowledge that he's going to put pen to paper, this deal, you can't do it. Simon Edvinsson, in fact, even if you could do it, do you really want to do it? And I'll get into that as we continue down here. Ben Sherratt is such an overrated player. It's crazy. He's barely a 3D. And this is where I think Stevie Yzerman maybe should be called out for just making like $4.7 million. I know his next contract is less, and it's closer to that 3D type. But he's not good, dude. He's not good. If he's an anchor to everybody he plays with. One thing I will say is I think the biggest challenge for Stevie Yzerman right now is Detroit overall as a city has kind of gone downhill quite a bit since the economic loss of General Motors and all of those sort of things like that. If you go to Detroit, there's a lot of crumbling around. They're trying to build it up, but vacated apartments and stuff like that. It's not the sexy city it once was. So it's not really a big draw that way, although it is a bigger market and you do got the Tigers and the Lions and you still got a lot of good things there. Thing is they haven't made the playoffs in 9 years. The hardest part of a rebuild, especially a deep rebuild like this one, is that when you get to the point where you want to start adding players, nobody wants to go there. Not too many serious free agents are looking at Detroit and wanting to roll the dice that they're going to be the one that brings this team to the promised land. So with that in mind, I think that's why a lot of these Ben Sherratt moves, Justin Falk, that trade was terrible, but Stevie Yzerman kind of pinned himself up, backed himself up against the wall last year when he didn't add anything at the deadline and told all his players that if you're in the position, you got to get yourself in a position of a playoff spot before I'm willing to risk these assets to be able to do that. And they did. But the problem is they were not a contender still. I think Stevie Yzerman should have kept his trap shut. When Larkin was upset, unfortunately, it's pretty tough to do because if they lose Larkin, I mean, you probably got another 10 years of rebuild here. It's hard to balance this stuff out as a manager. How do you, like, in one hand, I can see how he could promise them that. On the other hand, behind closed doors, I'm pretty sure he's looking at this roster and saying it's still not a contender. I shouldn't be doing this. And then you have all the public pressure of this team not being there for a long time. And some of it is, I think, probably, it doesn't matter. The responsibility falls on the management, and everybody knows that. But I think some of it has to do with the fact that he's been kind of unlucky. There has been a lot of unluck here. One guy that's really making it stressful for guys like Stevie Y and the Bowmans in Edmonton and a lot of other teams that are trying to move up and do well is Dubas. Dubas took that Pittsburgh team when they were a mess and grabbed a whole bunch of assets under everybody's noses, like Shinnikov, who I was screaming about last year before the season started, saying, Edmonton Oilers, a bunch of these teams, Detroit Red Wings should be all over this guy. The Novak, Mantha, they drafted that kid Kindle, moved up in the draft in what was supposed to be a weak draft, grabbed this Kindle kid, and he's getting 45 points right now. And you can call it any way you want it. He's an analytics guy. Big time. That's what he was said in Toronto. That's what he was touted as. He touts himself as that. So maybe you want to spend some money on an analytics group to start unearthing these value contracts, because they haven't. They went out and got Van Riemsdyk last year. He had some decent success. The only thing you can do at his age now is you got to get him in the offensive zone and hope he can score. The rest of the ice, he's useless. Like, he's just throwing darts at a wall that with players that he thinks he can get. But there's no excuses here when you see a guy like Dubas picking up these players and you're not. And I think that's the same as the rest of the league, to tell you. A lot of a lot of teams in the league, where they got to start realizing that you better pay some freaking money for some of the best analytics people in the land, because Those that do, the Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning, and so on, win cups. And Pittsburgh Penguins with Dubas, they grab players. St. Louis Blues, good example, right? And if you're not, and you're a manager, you should be fired right away. Right away. You should be fired. Screw you. Get out of here. Albert Johansson, the love affair with this guy, I'm not going to look at his analytics. I mean, he's got skills. There's no doubt about that. But I don't see the game progression that they see in this guy. I'm not sure where they get it from. Jacob Bernard Docker, I mean, he is what he is. Depth player. That's about it. So when you look in the minors now, they got this Nate Danielson kid. Surprise, surprise. Great 3-zone defensive player. Two-way guy. Offensive upside, iffy. Again. From what I saw of him, though, I think he's got more offensive upside than I hear a lot of people say that he has. I think he could be a good 50, 60 point guy in the league eventually. But and I think he's going to get a chance to do that next year. But besides that, you got a lot of guys that are very iffy here. Amadeus Lombardi had 42 points in 47 games, but he's 23 years old now. I don't know what his overall game looks like or what their plans are for him. He could be fine. I'm not sure. I don't get a chance to watch AHL games all that much. Stachowiak, he had a kind of a boom. Maybe, he's 27 years old. I think they got him from Europe and they signed him to a 1-year contract. It could be a late bloomer. I don't know. But honestly, none of this jumps off the page. Well, Vollander was a late first-round pick, and they've been waiting on him a long time. The offense never percolated, and now he's 24 years old. I mean, he's got a couple of years. So, like a lot of players, there's a lot of players that are drafted late first. They don't really become what they're going to become until they're 27. Not really something that they're waiting for right now. And goaltending wise, I didn't get into it. They have Gibson there. Whole lot of talk about Sebastian Cossa not being happy because Trey Augustine is taken over. And apparently this Michael Polstova kid beat him out in the minors. It was pretty good numbers. 17-6, 1.71 at a point. How old is he? 24, guy they found in Europe, and they seem to like him more, and Costa's pretty pissed. Stevie Eisenman likes to let his players cook in the minors for a very long time, and I think Costa's just said, no, you got too many goaltenders here. I don't want to be in a war for ice time. I want to get paid, mofo. Paid. And I didn't even mention Axel Sandin-Pellikka, which they have down here in the press box. He's got to play next year above these guys. But Justin Folk for a first last year, I can't tell you how bad that is. That was such a bad move. Terrible move. But I think he backed himself in the corner, and because he's Detroit, he had a tough time finding players that wanted to go there. And it made sense. And it wasn't really a great prospect market or a great trade market. So I ended up overpaying for a guy who's got 2 years left at 34 years old. That's pretty meh. And I think he'll end up playing down here. Docker will be out. And they gotta keep on playing this Pellikka kid. He's got tons of offense. I mean, he's still got to round out his game. But from everything I saw, he's going to look fine. If he does turn out fine, then they're okay. So that brings us to what do we do with Detroit? I think the pressure's too hot there in Detroit, and they're going to have to look at the free agent market this year, at least for one player to say that they did something. Personally, I don't think they should. I think they should let these kids grow, keep on adding draft picks, and keep going. I know it's been 9 years. It's been a long time, but well, let's just look at what you got here. Go down. You're not okay. You're not getting okay. Bobrovsky, that doesn't make any sense. Makar's going to sign in Colorado. Laine, I don't even think he's going to play this career. Jacob Trouba sounds like a guy that they might end up going to get and paying too much for. And taking minutes away from Pellico, which wouldn't be good. Trouba is not very good. He's not a top line center. Second line at best. He has this reputation that he's some sort of shutdown defenseman, and he's not. He's actually more of an offensive play driver than anything. I just don't think it's what they need. I do know that when he was in New York, I don't know if you remember when Wallman was traded to San Jose for a bag of pucks. The reason why they did that is they thought they had Jacob Trouba. And he ended up going to Anaheim. So something happened there. Somebody dropped the ball there because Wallman would have looked good in this lineup, to tell you the honest truth. Way better than Sherratt. So, I mean, they could go do that, but I don't want to be taking minutes from Pellica, man. And you already got Falk there. I don't see the point of that. And I'm not sure if Trouba would want to go to Detroit. I think there's going to be a fairly long list. First of all, he wants to stay in Anaheim, first and foremost. He's said that several times over and over again, and he might take a cut to stay there. If that's the case, he's off the table anyways. John Carlson, doubtful. I think he goes back to Washington, actually. Just watch. We'll see. But he's not going back to Anaheim. I know that. They got too many young players and need the ice time. They just used him for a playoff push. I think he goes back to Washington. Anders Lee, my gut says he stays in Long Island. He loves it there. Wouldn't be a bad pickup, though, if they were able to do it, to play on that left side. That's a guy that you might be able to get at a decent, and you wouldn't have to give him like super long. I wouldn't be bad. They've got, I didn't look at it. First of all, I guess I should go tell you their cap space. I forgot. Cap projections. Before I look at this free agency. Going on. There we go. Okay, 32 million they have. Now they have to sign. I said Patrick Kane, if he comes back, I'm not sure what they want to pay him or whatever. It's really up in the air, like seriously up in the air. I'm hearing that he's looking. He may check the market and try to find a team that, maybe he thinks it's his last year and he just doesn't want to roll the dice that this team isn't even close. And honestly, it's not. Van Riemsdyk won't be back. The only one they have is Edvinsson, and I think they got to get him signed up to about $8 million long, somewhere around there, if he'll sign that contract. And then they have 22 million to go. So $24 million yet. And they don't really have a lot to fill out in the roster. I like players to sign, but they do got to sign some players to fill the roster. So the good news is they got lots of money to work with. That post of a kid will probably play as a backup. Gibson's got one more year. Gives Augustine more time to get going. Not bad that way. It's just a question of, can they draw the free agents they need? I'm going to share this. Oops. Shoot. Yeah, free agents. share. Okay. Anders Lee wouldn't be bad. I just not sure he's going to want to go again. Like, say you're go to Anders Lee, okay? You go to his agent, say, hey, you know what? We're looking to add really gung ho about what we can do next year. Anders Lee is already in the island. He loves it there. You say, we'll give you what you made last year for 3 years till you're 38, 39 years old. And Anders Lee's like, I'm already on a team that I love that is probably just as good as yours. Why would I move my family all the way over to Detroit to go on a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 9 years, right? And honestly, if I'm a manager, is Anders Lee going to push you into contender status? I know they really need to make the playoffs, but this is the issues that they have. Jaden Schwartz in Seattle, honestly, I would take Lee over Schwartz. Pretty mid player now at this stage of his career. He's from Alberta. I have a feeling Edmonton will be on the phone with him. Oh, he's from Saskatchewan. I mean, you could go there, but is Schwartz you there? There's only Alex Tuck. He's talking to Buffalo right now. Apparently they offered him 9.5, and he's at 11. It's probably going to fall somewhere in the middle. They have $20-some million to spend. He does like being out east. Buffalo's kind of where his home base is. So Detroit isn't that far away. So logistically, it makes sense. The problem is everybody in the land is going to be on Tuck. He's the best free agent of the class right this year. So if Tuck is saying, you know, Tuck, I imagine at this stage at 30, he's looking to win a cup. Either he loves Buffalo and he's going to take a little less, maybe sign at that 9.5, or he's going to take the money and get 11 somewhere. In this market, with the cap going up the way, $11 million for a 30-goal scorer that plays 3-zone defense play, and I don't give a shit about the fact that he didn't have a point in the second round. That isn't going to matter even a little bit to join this market. You've got to convince him that you're a contender. So one of the things you're going to have to probably convince him of is that you got somebody else to go on this roster. In order for this team to even be close to considered a contender, or player like Mason Marchment would be a good example. Which I was going to talk about now. And Mason Marchment is probably getting $8 million on the open market. Okay, flat out. I don't know if he wants to. This doesn't sound like it. He's certainly not jumping to sign. I'm pretty sure they're offering a contract. It isn't really the sexiest market in the world, and they too haven't made the playoffs in a long time. So again, they go Tuck to Mason Marchment. Now they can go to Tuck, they can go to both of them, and they say, "Look, we got Mason, or Mason says he'll consider it if we're continuing to add." They go to Alex Tuck, and they say, all right. Yeah, and Alex Tuck pretty much just says the same thing. We got Mason Marchment coming in. We sign you. We think we are close. If you get here's next step, Sam. Like there's a bunch of ifs there, but no matter what's hanging over your head is you haven't made the playoffs in 9 years, so you're trying to convince these guys. And I think that's pretty much what they got to look at is players like that. Now, if any of those go, no, man, like Alex Tuck, what he cares about is winning a cup. Maybe Oilers sign him. They got just enough room to get him in, or Washington Capitals, I hear, are heavy on him. Probably have a better team. They got Ovi there, there's going to be a lot of teams. I would imagine with their handout for Alex Tuck. So if you can convince them and you can convince a Marchment, but some Marchment at $8 million, There's going to be tons of teams. Ottawa is going to be looking at him. San Jose might be looking at him. Boston might be looking at him. He's going to have a pick of a lot of teams that to go to. Tuck could have Carolina looking at him, who could very well be making the finals this year. I wouldn't doubt at all that Carolina was looking at Alex Tuck. So you're just hoping to snag one of them. And if you do, you can't stop. If this is it, and I don't think they should be doing this in a hockey sense, but I understand it in a PR sense, it's long enough. You can't wait anymore. But actually, I think they should wait for these kids to just keep on going with the Yzer plan. Maybe put them up in the president's office to make everybody happy that Yzerman's not making the decisions anymore, and just keep it rolling. And just has to happen that way. The thing with rebuilds is sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you hit well. And if things aren't hitting well, I'm going to all the teams. I'm going to hire a agency to identify the best analytic gurus in the league or not in the league. Find these guys, pay them, and say, I want you to dig for gold for me, man. That's what I would do. And I don't think Stevie Yzerman believes in this shit, because you wouldn't re-sign Ben Sherratt if you did. There's no way. I don't know how you watch that. Eye test wise, I don't get it. But Jason Dickinson would be really good. But again, he's one of those, he just doesn't put up offense, but at least you get a shutdown center. And then you're getting down to the iffy guys. Arvidsson had a great year. Does he want to stay in Boston? Does Boston want to keep him? I imagine they do. I bet you he ends up going back to Boston again. But he produced offense. And Boone Jenner, of course. If you whiff on those other guys, you're probably getting in on Boone Jenner, who has regressed considerably the last 2 years in Columbus. He's a name. He can produce offense, but you're probably throwing him $5 or $6 million a year. I wouldn't even be surprised if that's exactly who they pick up as a guy like Boone Jenner. Or either that or like Minnesota whiffs and they pick him up. Jenner, Tolvanen, maybe you just go with depth. Reach out to Tolvanen, pay him $5. Jenner, pay him $6.5 for long, for like 4 years till he's 36 years old. Tolvanen, if you can get any of these guys to go to a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a long time, you're probably going to have to overpay. Eric Holla, he had a pretty good year in Nashville. You could try him out. Maybe that's the way to go, but you're probably going to have to overpay these guys, and you want to do it on short-term contracts, because everything goes awry. They're tradable assets. Now, I don't know if you're going to have to give them trade protection, because in order to go to Detroit, you're going to have to convince them in other ways to come. It's just a reality. When a team hasn't made the playoffs in 9 years, they're not going to be able to get away. Like if a team is a contender, they can say, hey, come over here and maybe not give the same trade protection, maybe take $1 million off or something like that, because they just want to win a cup. But if you're a 35-year-old Eric Holla, I don't think you're looking at Detroit as a destination that makes you get the warm and fuzzies. You're going to have to convince all these players that we're adding a lot and we're going for it this year, and they're going to have to believe in it. And then maybe Kane would stay. I think a lot of the reason why Patrick Kane is kind of humming and hawing here is he wants to see if they're going to be able to draw the players necessary to get them into the not only into the playoffs, but actually be a contender this year. And that's a tough ask. For a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a long time, it's a tough ask. Yzerman's going to have to be extremely aggressive. And then you can look at the trade market. They traded their first-round draft pick last year, and now you're looking to trade these young guys that we just went through the prospect pool. They don't have a lot of they don't really have a lot of prospects. Considering they have been building for 9 years. I didn't even get into Carter Bear. I didn't go to their prospect pool, but Plant had I think he was like Hobie Baker level. I can't remember if he won last year. Again, another guy who looks like he's going to be a two-way guy with questionable offensive upside, just like Nygaard and all of these guys. Carter Bear, same thing. Now, you could use those guys because they're going to be a while. Maybe there's, Vancouver for DeBrusk, or, DeBrusk seems to be out there. Any team that is looking to kind of do a deeper rebuild may want those players, or there's players that are on the outs, and there's talk of Pedersen from Vancouver, which is a risky venture. He's lots of talk out there. When you got the general manager saying it's up to him to show the commitment this summer, that tells you something, man. A general manager of an organization generally doesn't call out trade assets like that. I had an argument with a guy on Twitter about this, saying that, it was his injury that he had. There is no problem in Vancouver like that. I mean, managers don't say that. And he asked me, it was like, well, how come Alvin didn't say anything about it? Well, of course, you're not going to say about it. I'm surprised Johnson and the Sedins are saying it. For the Johnsons and the Sedins to come out publicly and say it's up to him with his commitment and, possibly conditioning and all that kind of stuff like that. Something that seemed to fall off after he got the bag and a beautiful model wife who happens to live in Sweden and does their modeling career there while they go back and forth between Vancouver and Sweden. So where is this? If he's going back and forth between Sweden and Detroit all the time, how much is that affecting his life as far as how he's prepared? Prepared is the word that they use. So that's a risky venture. You have to somehow convince, and he's got a no trade clause, I believe. So does he want to go to Detroit? And you're taking the risk of this guy not with commitment issues. A general manager usually doesn't come out and say that, this new management team, unless they have looked around the league and they don't see how it's very likely that anybody wants him. Now, why would that be? Because they all know what's going on there. And basically they're saying, look, it's up to you. In other words, and if he is interested in moving on from Vancouver, they're still saying it's up to you because nobody wants you. Nobody wants you at your contract. And we're not going to, kill our cap for the next however many years and retain $3 million for you. So it's all up to you. But Detroit, I think that's really what they got. If they can't get Marchment, Tuck, big name guys like that over there, they're going to grab, they're going to try to grab Tolvanen and stuff like that. Otherwise, I think you're looking at the same old here. They're in the tweener side of things right now, just good enough to not make the playoffs. And once you get to that point, you should have a deep prospect pool, but they don't look like they do. And you should have the ability to add people. And that doesn't look like it's possible too. And that's not their fault. It's not what they should have. It's just once you reach that point, you have to be able to convince. You got to kind of go all in. They built their prospect pool as much as they possibly can. It's not the greatest right now. Tuck, 11 million. Either Jenner or Marchment, overpay and go. And you don't get those guys, you're getting Tolvanens, stuff like that I don't think is moving the needle too much. And you're selling at the deadline and you keep on going, you keep on adding. Hopefully you can win a lottery if you actually miss the playoffs bad enough to win it. Tough. Or you wait for Hughes. make up his mind in 2 years, which I think he's signing with Minnesota. All right. That's my full 42. No comments today. You're all listening. 2 people listening. All right. Thank you very much for listening. And the game's coming on here right away, so I'm going to watch it. That's my full 42.